It kind of starts out for me in a story that I never really told anybody for a long time. I'm 48 years old now. I'm for 46 years old. For 46 years, this was my internal struggle with who I was as a teenager. So as a teenager, I was that kid that was awful at sports. And where I come from, being sporty went with masculinity, went with your identity, went with your place in society, and you had a tribe with that. And when you didn't be sporty, it was extremely difficult to be those things. So I would have often been called the gay kid, the weirdo. And for me, when I look back at it, I try to play sports 5 hours a day after school because that was my hill to climb. I was like, if I can just get in one of those teams, then I could be cool. It was like the door would open, all those things would be realized. People go, he's actually a guy, right? He can do this. And so that was the way I looked at teenage life. And it was so powerful, that pull, that whenever I came to go to college, I remember 2 weeks before it, just deciding I couldn't go. You know, it was the thing of, this is just going to be more of the same. And I can't go through that anymore. It's time for me to start my work life. I'm going to go off and do that. And so that's what I did. I exited school when I was 17 years old. I went off and did an accountancy apprenticeship. And I think the big thing with Junk Kouture, what it's really about is what the thing that was missing for me was a similar platform as a teenager that could appreciate my skills. So instead of me spending 5 hours trying to do something that I could never achieve, this was something that was ready built for me. And it would be then ideally positioned for me to be celebrated, for me to get that tribe, and just the power of being seen for who you were. I think I always go back to that with Junk Kouture. It gives these young creative kids this opportunity to be seen for your skill. Instead of teachers saying to you, you need to be good at your maths or whatever, no, what you do is excellent and it can contribute to the world. So that was one element of it. Another element then, which was a big part of growing up in rural Ireland at the time, we were very frugal. There wasn't much money. To be creative in our home, everything that we could get our hands on, we used. I say to people, like Kellogg's cornflakes, the great thing about them was inside it, you could paint on that. That was our paint and paper. And we used to freak out, and I freak out when Kellogg's had a promotion that said it's printed on the inside, because then it was like, we've lost the greatest asset that this box was, right? Forget about the promotion. I don't want to collect stamps for something. This for me was the way that I could express myself. There was no Staples or anywhere you could go to buy A4 paper. This was it. But as well as that, then there was a whole load of innovation in that, like, that people didn't realize, and fun. You were using jam jars and you were washing them out and putting your pens in them. We were sitting in notes or knitting sewing. My mother was always teaching us those things as kids. We could mend our shoes. We could sew on a button. And it was just subtly those things disappeared. Now, I have to admit, I never noticed them disappear. And it was only 15 years ago, I was traveling in South America and I was in this old lady's home, and we couldn't speak each other's language, but she insisted on whoever was with me translating to explain to me how the table mats were made by her. And the table mats were made by taking the corks out of wine bottles, gluing them in a circle, and when they were hard, then slicing them. And that just brought me back to this idea in Ireland where we kind of reuse things. So the idea of Junk Kouture was, how could I get kids to be creative, compete with each other, and reuse materials in a way that kind of showed that they had value more than just putting them in a bin. That was the essence. And that started out in 13 years ago now.
13 years ago. And let me just translate for those listening to America. I believe the bin is the trash can.
Yes, I need to be aware of that. The bin is the trash
The
can.
bin, yes. Wonderful story that you brought things from your childhood, both your outcast situation because you weren't into sports, but also reuse, recycle. And you weren't really probably thinking save the planet. You were just thinking, this is where we can get the stuff to do the artwork.
To be honest with you, the very first notion or push for this was it was around a challenge that I had with myself, because as a teenager at school, I did accountancy at school because you had to choose between art and accountancy. And my parents were wisely told at the time, there's no money in the arts, right? An accountancy, he can get a job as an accountant. So the whole real push for me at the start was my pushback against that societal thing where creativity isn't valued. And sometimes you see, I use this example of the iPhone here. A newspaper did a whole study about the great iPhone ripoff. And it was like, do you realize that an iPhone costs $10 to make? And these guys are charging you $800 and $900 for these things. Like, it's just ripping you off. And the bit that I see that they didn't get was, Nokia were number one. It was the design of the iPhone that brought people to it. And as I explained, that good design, like a 2-year-old can use it, and a 70-year-old can use it without an instruction manual. My mom is 72, right? She couldn't use a Nokia phone. She could just dial people, but she can get on her Candy Crush, right? That's it. She doesn't. When design and creativity is done right, it speaks volumes. And that's the bit that everybody misses, because everybody thinks too, when it's done, it was easy.
Right.
But before it wasn't. And I'd say to people, sit down and write me a hit song that 1 billion people will stream. And they go blank. But a hit song will make people go, wow. That's the value of creativity.
Tell me about what Junk Kouture is today. What does it look like? Explain it for those who've never heard of it, because they will be wowed. Go for it.
So for me, it's a global impact business. And by that, what I mean, so take the 3 words, global. We have now participants in 35 countries. We have the impact part is then it creates an impact both for people and planet. And just to go into that a little bit, I'll give you a story. A young guy from Kerry, rural Ireland, who entered the competition in 2018, didn't do very well, but saw what was needed. Got that fire in his belly, went away, knitted this incredible suit, came back the next year, won hands down. And then as part of winning it, one of the things that I've always brought to this was opportunities was the biggest thing for me, right? So how could I get them opportunities? So he went to Cannes Film Festival. He went to the Royal Film premiere of the 1917 movie, Sam Mendes movie in London, and Prince Charles was there. All like, really cool things. And he's been photographed with these people on the red carpet. And a year later, he's been interviewed about it. And the interviewer saying, God, you're 17. Like, most adults will never get to see or do any of these things. But what was the biggest thing? And this 17-year-old pauses for a second, and he said, actually, the biggest thing for me was I found my personality. And it was in that moment I realized this is what the impact is on young people. It's the power of being seen for who you are. And parents have written to me thanking me for what I've done for their kids. And like, I haven't. We created a platform that allows people to be safe and express themselves the way they want to be. And that has a power beyond what most people can believe. So that's the impact part. And then as a business part, our business model is very much, it's known as integrated entertainment media. So that's in the world of UFC, Formula One, WWE. So it's large scale events that tour the world, sell tickets, sponsorship, media rights, licensing and city deals. And to give you an idea now of where we are in our journey. So we were in Ireland for 11 years. And in 2021 decided to go global. So in the first year, that revenue were around $1.3 million. Last year, that trebled, so it grew 300%, just under $3.7 million. And we have a goal to, I'm not going to say treble this year again, but it's all under pressure, Natasha. But we're pushing the boundaries of that all the time.
Okay, so let's talk about an individual. We don't need to say who that individual is, but let's hear, how does this kid hear about this in their city or their school? What's the first step?
So for us, there's loads of ways they do, but I think we've an onboarding process that we do, which is our methodology. That doesn't mean that kids don't come through other doors because they heard their cousin do it or somebody else in another country. But our process is we have an onboarding team in each country. Their job then is they start with the Department of Education, and then from that they explain. So you got creative kids in your classrooms. They're not getting the same exposure to confidence, try building, recognition of their skills as other athletes or whatever would get. Here's a sport for them. It's completely free for your school. Plus, then that bolts on this education program around sustainability and circularity. So
Wow.
it's a win-win for them.
Is there an application, or can the head sports guy be also in Junk Kouture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyone at all. And it's like that. It suits kids. Like the opening in the market or the niche in the market is kids that don't have a sport, but that doesn't mean there are kids from all walks of life that can take part. They've got different ways to express themselves in it. So then with buy-in from the Department of Education, then that filters down into schools. And the way the schools work for me is schools, number one, if I take Ireland's a simple market, there's 500,000 kids, 13 to 18 in Ireland. I could either market to 500,000 kids, or if I go, I have 1,000 schools. So that reduces my surface area massively. Plus, schools have all the structures in place. That means I'm structure light. I don't have to go into all that structures. And they then also have the child protection and the child, like the ability to take kids out of school, bring them to events and so on without me getting into all that. So that helps massively.
Is there a program that somebody in each school is running and helping the kids source their ideas and source their materials?
So it started out at the very start. It was very much art teachers. So art teachers were our number one market, and we would have had a lot of resources for them. And then you would have found that the costumes and the dresses and the designs that were produced were glued together. It was very much glued together. It was paper mache, this kind of stuff. As the years went on, we started to get teachers from home economics get involved. Then all of a sudden, and I remember it was 2017, the first time one of the outfits was completely sewn. Right, it was a guy, he sewed the whole thing. And I remember the judges going, okay, right, we're on a different level now, right? This is totally sewn garment. And I mean, sewing like leaves from trees and all, finding ways to preserve them so they can become a material. This is not material. And then what's happened in the last 3 or 4 years is more technology teachers. So you're getting people welding, using metals, using electronics. There's a girl in this year's World Final who created a dress that it's more of a suit than a dress, but she has Christmas tree lights all through it. So it lights up, right? But it's just the science, engineering, and maths element too. So there's so many facets to what it is. And then the idea as well is that fashion can be different for all people. And one of the things that people often ask me, why fashion? And I steal a line from The Devil Wears Prada, right? Stanley Tucci has this line in The Devil Wears Prada. The fashion is the most important art form in the world because we all express ourselves through it every day. We're all artists in our clothes, right? That was his point. Whereas not all of us paint, not all of us make music, not all of us sing, but we all wear clothes and we all express who we are through it. So everybody has an idea of it. And it's great now that you see kids who are more on the science side of things coming into it and going, okay, fashion just doesn't have to be about clothing. In the future, and you'll see it more wearables, these kind of ideas, bits and pieces. But it's fascinating to see the innovation that it drives in, because I met this young girl, Katie, in 2012. She was 16. And Katie was the first to really use food in the designs. And I remember her when I met her, but her dress was made out of orange peel, and her story was that kept rotting. And eventually Katie figured out a way to make a leather material out of it. And there are so many, then that inspired others, because we've had banana leather now, and we've had coconuts and all kinds of things, and passion fruit. There's one there, passion fruit at the minute. And the girl from the passion fruit one was explaining to me that the way she preserved the passion fruit was that she coated it in wax. And I was going, okay, like adults wouldn't have the patience to figure it out.
She's creating a new category. I would like for you to explain to me. I've asked you this before. I still don't understand it. And I think it's wonderful. When you are listening to this podcast, people are going to be imagining some cute kind of not so great looking fashionable items. But when you go to the website or you go to the Instagram, your jaw will drop to the floor. They are literally couture worthy, very beautifully structured, incredible in what they've sourced and the stories that they put behind. How does that happen?
Oh, God.
These do not look like a kid's project.
No, they don't. No, they don't. You're right. And I remember, like, it was my niece at the time, one day said to me, Uncle Troy, can we make a Junk Kouture dress? And I have an IT company too. So we went into the storeroom, we took out bubble wrap, we took out all kinds of things. And after an hour or two, I was going, okay, this is not easy. This is not easy. Like, we did something, but I mean, look, I couldn't show anybody the photos of that. They go, that's the CEO? Okay, we need to fire his ass. He's gone. Because it is not easy. But one of the things, as I describe it, this is how I describe it to people. I call it a can't switch, right? And when we're born, to me, the can't switch is at 0 in our heads. So it means that at 4 or 5 years old, you can put on a towel and believe you can be Superman, because the world hasn't told you can't. And it's really the world and the culture you grew up in. So everybody's got a different culture, but that culture will start to seep into your bones. And people will tell you can't do that. What does your parents do? You can't touch that fire, it's going to burn you. You can't put your hand in there. You can't go over to the edge of there, you're going to fall. It's can't is the word we keep using over and over again. So as people grow older, that can't switch goes on and on. But between the age of 13 and 18, there's still enough scope there where people don't have that can't switch fully on. And it's like Katie with the orange peel. I'm sure her parents told her, that can't work. It's just going to rot. You're being an idiot, right? But the young mind is still open enough to go, I'll show you. I'll do it. I'll figure it out. And that's, I think, then that's one of the elements, because when we sit and talk to some of the kids, you'd go, I could never have done that. But my imagination's too closed now. And then this is the other thing. You become addicted to that energy. I would love it back. I would love it back. I would love to see it back, or just get a little bit of it. If you could bottle it up, would be fantastic. Because the thing that we do then as entrepreneurs is we hire people in to teach us innovation, to get innovation back in our companies, to get us thinking these things. But that age, that teenage age, they do it naturally. And then I think there's another element of it, is this wanting to be cool. This is a natural driver for it, because when you think of kids who partake in football or basketball, you'd ask, why do they push themselves every week? Why do they train outside school and lift weights and put to get there? Because it's not just the winning, it's the recognition that comes with all of that. And so for my kids, it's the same. They're all driving towards that same thing. So when something fails, they go, I'm going to go again, and I'm going to go again, and I'm going to go again. It's just in a different field or a different mode. Mm-hmm. But then it's those the middle of the night when nothing's working, and you know this in your business too. It's the exact same. When nothing is working and you're going, Jesus, this is not, I'm gone in the morning. Then you go, I have to try that mad idea that I said wouldn't work. And that's sometimes the big change. And so it's the same for them. When you listen to their stories and they go, we were all crying going, it was not going to work. And then one of them said, we have to do this, and go, but sure, we thought about that. That's not going to work. And then we try it and go, oh my God. And so it's the same. It's a very entrepreneurial journey. It is a very entrepreneurial journey. I'm a big supporter of entrepreneurship as a view through all the things that we've done and learned ourselves in our lifetime. And I have this mantra that if you can teach people to create a job versus get one, then you never have anybody unemployed. Because they'll just create their own job. And that's what these kids become like, because that whole 1 year, it takes a year, some of these designs, they will, if you listen to them, have these moments in that where they had to be resilient. They had to be relentless. They had to say, no, I can get there. And even, our shows now, so the whole thing, just to give people an idea of the runway of it. So it kind of starts off at the start of school, when school goes back in August, September time. The first kind of outline is that they will create a design of what they think they're going to create. And so that might be, they'll have to write a piece about that. So they tell us whether it's inspired by nature, inspired by another designer. Alexander McQueen is very common. Inspired by society, inspired by some of the stuff they see in the news or the environment. And then they have to then draw out what that looks like. And then they have to start to hunt for materials that they believe are unique, because that's the goal. The more unique, the more points you get. So that drives them out to go, okay, what has not been done before? Let's see what I could do with that to show other people. And then you obviously have to make it. And it's the making processes where a lot of this failure happens in. So I mean, if you take Katie's, for example, I think it rotted 4 times, like it was moldy and all this kind of stuff, and as a normal organic material would be. And then, and as Katie describes it, she ended up, and she hated science, but she ended up in science labs trying to figure out the science of food, and actually got really interested in the science of food and went on to do that at college. So opened up this whole door for her.
Wow.
But then her friends were wondering, what are you doing in the science lab? You don't even do science. What are you doing in there? But it was, so something in her head went, I'm not quitting on the orange. I'm going to work on the orange, as opposed to somebody else saying, oh no, leave that behind. And so whenever that's all done and completed, then they have a 1-week marketing exercise that they have to do. And I think one of the big things about that is, it's all great as an entrepreneur, build a product. We all know that. We all can build products day and night. If you can't sell it, there's no point in building a product. So that week-long exercise is about getting them out. Again, there's no rules in that. And I've had kids email and go, oh, this person's cheating. And I'm going, no, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. So the goal is to get as much PR traction for your design in a week. And then by doing that, you're then employing your community. You are educating them about upcycling. You're educating them about circularity. And believe it or not, you're getting recognition for your skills. Mm-hmm. So that then helps feed into then this event that we have, that they're different sizes. Some have 1,000 people, some have 5,000 people, but they get 1 minute on stage. That minute looks like something like, so we will read out the little bit of the influence that they gave us at the start. So they'll say, hi, this is Natasha. Natasha is very influenced by the violin. She decided to make this out of old hairs from bows, whatever it is, right? And then they will go from there into, they have 1 minute of music, which is entirely of their choosing. And they choreograph something, so it's performance art. And so what happens in that, and I'd be there like backstage.
Like runway performance art, right? So they're walking out on stage in their own couture that they developed.
Correct.
And doing some sort of performance or just a walk.
Some do the walk, right? But the thing that really goes well here is, again, it's an elevator pitch. And so we would explain to them, you've got 1 minute to wow an audience. If you bring that audience to his feet, the judges are going to give you more score, right? So it's broken down into 4 scores. So at the end of the day, you have to score high in all of them to win. And
can they speak?
I have seen,
can they speak during that 1 minute?
1 minute. It's hard to believe what people do in a minute.
No, but can they speak? Is that part of
No, they can't speak. So they can use visual aids, but they cannot speak. So for example, I remember this girl came out and the whole design was based around road safety, and it was seat belts and all the rest of it. But through that audience of 5,000 people, she had planted people with big light up signs that were going to come on neon and go, wear your seatbelt. So the minute she came out, these people all stood up. The place is looking around, going, what's going on here? Music comes on, and she's bouncing around this place, and it just builds atmosphere. I remember too, there was these 3 girls that made this dress from old ties, and the theme was that the tie was a symbol of the male domination over females. And the whole theme was around that women need to break free from male domination, right? And it's gone back 5 or 6 years ago, and there's still a big thing around this, but they used the first 30 seconds of their music to be very much like doom and gloom. And after 30 seconds, like, they ripped those ties open, and underneath was this beautiful gown that they had made out of newspapers, and the music changed to Madonna, and they came pumping down that runway. And sure, the atmosphere in the place just erupts. And it all fits together in a way, but I describe the event as like a night of the opera for the 21st century. It's like a tapestry of, there's 60 designs. It's a tapestry of 60 stories woven together. It's like the best nightclub you've ever been. You're going to hear country music. You're going to hear classical music. You're going to hear Taylor Swift. It's just this mix match of stuff. And it's funny because I've had people text me after going, please send me the running list, the music. I want to make a playlist because I just had this great night. I never thought I would listen to some M tracks, but they all weave together really well. But there's a massive energy that happens in that. And then from a spiritual point of view, like I think something spiritual happens at those events because I've described it to you before, but they have a minute on stage and it's almost like the energy of 5,000 people transcends into them. And I've seen it before, like with
I know what that feels like.
Big performers, like they soak the energy of the audience. It's the same as that. And like those kids are shaking before they go on because these are arenas that Beyonce is in. Shawn Mendes, I remember we were in the 3 Arena one year, a week after Shawn Mendes, and they were in the elevator, touching the elevator. Did Shawn touch this? And young girls yourself, thinking Shawn was the hero. And to be on a stage that he would have been on a week ago, it's a big deal. You're 16 years old. But I see the smile and the change in their demeanor when they come off. And that's priceless. That impact, I think, will live with them forever. That 1 minute. And it's this thing that you could change people's lives in a minute.
So they all win. That's just a fact. If they're on that stage, if they're in that program, they're winning. Is there a winner, or are there categories of winners on these particular stage shows?
There are winners. So yes, and you're right too, in a way, everybody that gets there has achieved something. Like now there's thousands, starts out with thousands. That final show ends up at 60. So you've come far to get there. But then there is an overall World Designer of the Year. And then there are various things in it. Glamour winners, because some of the designs might be outrageous. Some of them then would be red carpet ready. Some would be more the STEM side of things. So there would be 10 to 12 awards, different years. And so, for example, those glamour winners then would usually go to Cannes Film Festival and do things like that, where they would. And so kids at the start will know those awards and go, okay, I'm going for that one. And It's funny. The premiere stuff, right, came, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but it came out by fluke, right? So many years ago, I used to give money to this charity in the UK, and every year they would write to me with 2 tickets to a film premiere. They were, still had to pay for them, and they were exorbitant amount of money, but it was the way they raised money. So one of the years, Junk Kouture was a year and a half old. I didn't want to go. And I remember saying to my wife at the time, God, I wonder if I send to the Junk Kouture kids, what would happen? And then she goes, and do what? Because what happens to those premieres is, like, whatever side the news crew are on, so maybe it's on the famous people in the movie are all on one side, and then there's all the people who are either charity or who are in the PR company or who are sweeping the floor, right? They all go on the other side, and they all go in the main door. The other people go into the paparazzi pit. So I says, you know what, I'm going to try it. I'm going to get these two girls to go. Got 2 girls, got them, they had their dresses and all organized, sent them to London. And I told them a wee lie. In Ireland, we say a wee fib, right? I told them a wee fib. I said to them, the paparazzi was waiting on them. But they weren't. They were on my tickets, which were just 2 charity tickets. So I said, look, when you go up the red carpet, you're going to come to the main door. Don't go in. Go straight into the paparazzi pit and pose. They'll know what to do. The paps will know what to do. You just have to pose. So the 2 girls were 16. I had a chaperone with them. And then up they went, past the main door, and they went in and they started doing the posing. And of course, you have about 100 paparazzi people there, right? So they don't know what it is, right? But I knew they would just start flashing, because what else are they going to do? So of course, as the light bulbs go off, the 2 girls get more into it. They're like, geez, because it's an adrenaline rush. So the next day, I think they made 3 or 4 of the papers. Nobody knew who they were, but right. And then we sent it to newspapers that were in their local area. So they went out and did a whole story about these 2 girls that upstaged everything. because at the time, and I remember Little Mix was the band that were coming out of X Factor at the time. And the Little Mix girls were over to ask the Junk Kouture girls for photos. And I remember the two girls saying, this was fun, like an unreal experience. So then eventually I did ring up the studio that was involved, the PR company. I said, look, that was us. And we did it like a guerrilla thing. Could we have a beneficial relationship where we could bring these kids every year? So we do now bring kids every year. But sometimes you don't ask. You ask for forgiveness later.
Right,
you just have to go for it.
That's brilliant. You are a tricky guy. For the awards, is there a certificate or is there money won? Is there anything like that, or is it just simply?
So there is. The money is, there's usually money for the school, and then for the kids involved, it's usually scholarship stuff. So it will be bursaries to fashion colleges is usually the number one thing. Then it'll be like, so last year Microsoft were one of our partners, so they got Surface tablets.
Wow.
There's different prizes for different things. So all of them, as much as possible, we try to create experiences.
Yeah.
So I know Microsoft were talking about taking kids to Redmond, right? Which would be really cool, getting tours of the facilities over there, being part of some of the ecosystem for a day or two. But like that would be, because ultimately for me, it's the opportunities that the kids can get to experience something else and then realize, because that's the message. You got yourself here, wasn't us. You're relentless, your resiliency, your effort, your whenever the thing wasn't going to work, your those dark nights and you kept going. That's what got you here. If you can bring that message back to your school and your community and you can keep doing that, you will achieve whatever you want to achieve, which is what entrepreneurship's about. Like, you design your life.
One of the questions I had for you, which I have an answer for, but I want to hear it from you. Who benefits from Junk Kouture? But I think it might be easier to say who doesn't benefit from Junk Kouture, because it seems to have every aspect: social impact, environmental impact, the teachers benefit, the school districts benefit, all the rest of the kids benefit, the kids themselves benefit, their families benefit, the people coming to shows benefit, whether they know them or not. Then the way they're made to feel once they leave emanates into the rest of the world. I think you might have figured out a way to save the world.
But you have a good point around the benefit part. There's so many people do benefit from it. Like, I've never actually added that up before. There's no negative at all. There's no negative. It's built in a way that one of the big things that I wanted to do was that for the kids involved, it would be free. Because I didn't want, like, I always described it as Formula One as a sport. Like, so it's kind of the same mechanics for me, is because I have to explain how the business works. So it explains the mechanics of it. But one of the big differences was, if you were in Mumbai watching the Formula One race and you dare to dream to be part of that, it takes millions of dollars and takes a lot of luck and a lot of different things, but it's millions of dollars is the number one thing. Most of those drivers at the start, they're paying their way onto those teams. I wanted that if you dare to believe that you could be in Junk Kouture next year, is that all you need is trash and imagination. So there was you didn't need fancy golf clubs. You didn't need any kind of thing. You didn't need rich parents. There was a way for you to get there. And then if we can bring the mindset, and like, I learned so much. I mean, we both were at EMP as part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm learning all that stuff in my 40s. But really, biggest thing that I got out of EMP was the tribe. And the people seeing me and feeling part of that at a higher level. Again, for me, we're all the same as people, right? But sometimes it's the mindset, and we put people on pedestals. So like, I go back to Wes Anderson at the start, and I was going, like, this guy's built this massive company, but if I saw him in the street, I wouldn't think it. He's just a normal guy. And then it was learning that from other people. So it's the same. If I can bring all the stuff, and when I'm sitting there, I'm learning, I'm going, how can that adapt into the Junk Kouture world, so that some of these kids can get the benefits of that at a much younger age? and come out much more prepared for life. They're still going to have the little traumas, the traumas that happen to them. But it's like, they're not waiting to their 40s to discover how to fix it. And then they've become entrepreneurs. I've a load of them who've started their little companies. And I would love now the next stage, and this is something that we're planning around at the moment, is being able to then take investments in some of them, or and bring in mentors and so on all across the world that will ignite all these businesses. They don't have to be in creativity, but these young people are very creative. And then for the mentors themselves, they're getting connected to this young, vibrant, connective energy that maybe spark ideas in them that they wouldn't necessarily have had before.
Switching back to the business part of Junk Kouture, what would you say today as you're sitting here is wearing on you mentally? What is the one challenge that's just kind of gnawing at you? Because we talk a lot about success, but on this podcast, we talk about the reality also. Just name one thing that you are.
Can't grow fast enough. So growing too fast for the cash to catch up. That's been one of the things. So for example, I had another EOer who's in Vietnam, who met somebody out there. All of a sudden they're on a phone to me. They want to bring Junk Kouture to Vietnam. Another guy wants to bring it to Nigeria. I phone call a month ago. We want to bring this. The Irish government want to bring it into Nigeria and set it up in Nigeria. I can't. No, I can't.
Is it cash or is it not enough staff? What is the?
I think I will be honest with you, Natasha. One of the biggest challenges that I had was finding. So it took me 2 years to raise $2 million of seed, right? And then I set out last year to understand how I'd raise a Series A, which would be to more institutional investors. So that would be people who are money and door openers and had expertise. Companies who have done it before, people who've taken bits and pieces in companies that were there, they're in Formula E, they're the new ones, Sail GP, whatever. And I think the thing there for me then is the belief that I can do it is one thing. Can I do it? Because I remember at the start when I went out to raise a seed after 9 months, I hadn't raised any money. And so I kept saying to myself was, okay, it's me. I'm the problem. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Nobody believes in it. Nobody trusts me, whatever. And I think at the minute I'm going through that similar process because now I need bigger checks. I need checks that are $1 million, right? So I'm going through that same process going, okay, am I in the right rooms? Am I able to get into the right rooms? So like I'm getting investors at 25 and 50 grand. And it's okay, when can I transition to that one where I can get the right capital? Because capital is important. Otherwise, what happens as a CEO, you exit the business. For me, that's the way I see it. You exit the business as CEO and you become just finding capital all the time. It consumes you. And then so the creative piece that I've got, the driving the team, helping them, nurture them, bring them along, help the culture and all, that then becomes second or third down the line because you're constantly going, okay, why is this taking me 6 months? What am I doing wrong? I have to say, I walk a lot of steps questioning myself around that. So that I think is the biggest challenge for me. Self-belief that, and I think you build it in steps. Like it's not a straight line. I know they do these graphs like hockey sticks and all the rest of it, right? But my experience has been it doesn't grow like that. And it's almost like, it's like a chrysalis. So you go so far and then it's almost like you go into yourself, right? And then we do things like EMP and so on, and we surround ourselves with other people. And then we come out the other side able to now communicate with people who can write $1 million check. Whereas before that, they're going, you're not talking the right language, or the confidence isn't in your voice, whatever it is, there's something about it, right? And then obviously then I'll have to go again because I'm not stopping, right? So for me, It's how do I reach every classroom in the world? And then we drive revenue. We have a unit economics model based on the number of schools. So that will help drive revenue. But at every one of those points, I know there's going to be the pain of me going into the old Troy and coming back out with the one who can now find people who can do $20 million checks. And the same with sales and revenue. We've Deloitte as a global partner and Microsoft and these people, and it's incredible. But at the same time, I look at what the Olympics gets for sponsorship, like it's $30 million a year per partner, right? And then I'm going, okay, when will I have the voice to ask somebody in a room for $30 million a year for revenue off one partner? Obviously, it has to stack up. But, you know, as well as that, you have to have the strength inside that when it comes out, the people go, okay, that's what the price is.
Yeah.
Because it's worth it.
I see you are on the trajectory to being able to ask that question someday. And one day, I would like to request that all of this experience of your life and Junk Kouture gets put into not just one book, but maybe a series of books. And we can talk about that later.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about, you've mentioned book to me before, and I was thinking about, I'll never fit it in. Because there's some mad stories in there and crazy rooms that I find myself in. But I think one of the exciting parts is the crazy rooms that I'm going to find myself in that I don't realize yet that'll come.